The most basic task of a church leader is to discern the spiritual gifts of all those under his authority and to encourage those gifts to be used to the full benefit of all. I can't know the gifts of everybody, but I can know the gifts of my leadership team, and I can equip them, task them with your job now is to go as a leader, find the gifting of those who are out there in the ministry that you're trying to do. That is so massively important to have in our heads. It is not good that man leads alone. If Moses needed 70 for crying out loud, how many do I need? Because I'm not Moses.
Welcome to Upstream, a source of ideas and encouragement for courageous bishops, pastors, priests, seminarians, and the people who support and work with them. All who are swimming against the currents of an increasingly hostile worldly culture to bring Jesus to that world. I'm your host, Pat Lencioni, joined by a dear friend, Father John Riccardo. How are you doing, Father Riccardo?
I'm doing good, my brother and friend. Good to see you.
It is fun to be here with you. And we're going to talk about something that I'm very passionate about today. And it's about rethinking volunteers in our parishes especially, but whether it could be in a diocese or an apostolate as well. The grand majority of people who volunteer in the Catholic world probably do so in their local parish. And you were a parish priest. You now run Acts 29 and you have the rescue program and do all this wonderful stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how we can think differently, select and utilize volunteers differently in the church. Sound good?
Sounds perfect. Worthwhile topic. Can I tell you why it's such a worthwhile topic?
Yeah, please.
You know, there's only two places in the whole Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, where it said it's not good. Only two. The first is Genesis 2 with man. It's not good that man's alone. The second time when it said it's not good is when Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, comes to him and says, what you are doing is not good. And Moses says, what am I doing? He says, you're trying to lead alone and you can't do it. You're wearing the people out and you're exhausting yourself. Therefore, ask the Lord to show you 70 wise men and women to help you. As we talk into what we're going to talk about, that is so massively important to have in our heads. It is not good that man leads alone. And so for a pastor listening or a bishop listening, like if Moses needed 70 for crying out loud, how many do I need? Because I'm not Moses.
And a pastor might say, well, I don't have a budget for 70 people. And it's like, God didn't say you need to provide a 401k program for 70 people.
That's right. I mean, I would spend like the first 8-9 months every time I would get assigned as a pastor, just walking around the perimeter of the church. And my prayer was just, Lord, I need you to show me who these people are. I just got here. I don't know them. They don't know me. Bring to me 70 wise men and women to help me lead. Some are going to be paid. Some are going to be volunteers. Doesn't matter. We need people to do the ministry. All you know, Lord, is I can't do this alone. So show me the people and bring me the people with the gifts that complement them so that we can accomplish your vision here.
That's so interesting, because that distinction between paid and volunteers so often, and we'll talk about this in a moment, is so often like how we think about people. And it's so irrelevant mostly to what they're going to do. So
Absolutely.
Let's talk about, I've got 4 or 5 of the biggest, what I see as problems in how we see volunteers in our parishes and other apostolates, okay?
Sure.
And the first one is low expectations. We think, well, they're a volunteer and I'm not paying them, and it gets into that. And therefore, I probably shouldn't ask very much of them. I should probably limit what the standards are I have for them and what I ask them to do. And of course, that's so very dangerous. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that you're going to end up getting the kind of people who want to have a job, a role with low standards, and they don't really want to work hard.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, we would always say to people, in the body of Christ, there are no justs. So there's no, I'm just the bookkeeper or I'm just a volunteer. It's like, nope, there are no justs here. I can't say I'm just the pastor. And so mindful of that, what we would do, which we found to be super helpful to raise expectations, we would actually charter every ministry we had. So whoever was the ministry head, we would have them write a charter of what the ministry was about, how often we were, like if there were expectations about how often we were going to meet, whatever the case might be, and it would be clearly articulated, and then everybody signed the charter so that everybody knew, like, you don't have to do this, but if you do this, we're going to hold each other accountable. And you've just given me permission to do that by the fact that you just signed the charter and said, I'm in for that.
You know what's ironic is we think that if we hold people to low standards, then we'll be able to get more volunteers because they will be unafraid. But what we end up doing is we push away our best volunteers.
Oh, yeah.
For years, I didn't volunteer in the church because when I did go around to volunteer, it felt so, the expectations were so low, and the other people that were volunteering were not the kind of people I would have wanted to work with. And it kept me out. And sometimes the most capable people in a parish that I've seen are the ones that want to come in and do something wonderful, and they're treated as though it's not that important, so they go elsewhere. You know, I was on the board of directors for a number of years of the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and volunteers at the Make-A-Wish Foundation are told basically, we're going to treat you you have to do this job. These are kids who are in life-threatening illness, and it's their wish, and there's no compromise on quality. So if you want to work someplace and volunteer someplace where it's not that important and you don't have high standards, then go someplace else. And as a result, the best volunteers were like, that's the place to work because they're going to expect a lot of me and it matters. And they were drawn to that.
What you just said about Make-A-Wish was they cast a vision, right?
Yeah.
So everybody knew what the vision was. And I think oftentimes the reality is in the church, I don't think there's a lot of clarity on what the vision actually is. What is the mission? So outside of marriage and family, there's nothing that remotely compares with the mission of a parish, because the mission of the parish is to rescue, renew, and transform the human family in your area into the family of God. And in this increasingly, divided culture that we're living in, which tends to group people into us and them, the mission of the church is to help people realize, well, there is no them, like we are them, and them are us. And the Lord wants all his children back, and he wants to use us, broken as we are, to bring them into the family of God. And so what could possibly be more important than this? So we need you.
And then, what's so funny? And at the beginning, like in September, a lot of times they're recruiting volunteers because everything's getting started. And they'll say, hey, if you want to do this, let us know. It's easy. And they're actually making it sound like if you have a pulse, and don't worry. It's ironic because people really think that's the way to attract people. And it would be so much better, I think, if they said, hey, if you really have a passion for bringing people to Jesus and you want to do something that's going to matter so much and you want to be pushed hard, this will change your life.
Couldn't agree more. And especially going to push off men. Hey, there's really nothing to this. It's kind of a waste of your time. We're not going to expect much of you. We don't even really need you. We just need you to be breathing. Yeah, great. Sign me up, right?
Yeah. And think about a great volunteer who goes to a parish and they go, I went there, nobody was ever on time. The work we did didn't matter. People flaked out and nobody said anything to them. They then go tell other people, yeah, volunteering at St. Mary's Church was actually very painful for me. And then all the other good volunteers go, I don't want to do that. If you're listening to this, raise the expectations for your volunteers. Hold them accountable in love, and it's going to attract more people because they want to know what the work they do is important. And this is so important. Here's another problem, Father, is when we see volunteers in a generic way. And this coincides with, we have a need for somebody to do the capital campaign. Anybody who wants to volunteer, that's what we're going to have you do. And so people aren't looked at as having a unique set of gifts or talents. It's just like, you're just a person. And like, I've gone to parishes before and said, I'd like to volunteer. And they're like, well, we need somebody to send out envelopes right now. How about that? And first of all, it's not that it's below me. It's like, I'm terrible at that kind of stuff. And you're not even interested in what I'm bringing to the table. And so tell me about, I know you have some great thoughts about this.
So lining people up with their gifts is super important. So the surefire way to both kill enthusiasm in a volunteer or anybody doing ministry and make it fruitless is to put people with gifts in a place where their gifts don't line up.
Right.
So somebody who can't sing, you don't want them to cantor. Doesn't work, right? To me, the number one example is We have people oftentimes in parishes who serve as quote unquote ushers, who do not have the charism of hospitality. Those are not the people you want at the door greeting people. I remember I went to Saddleback one time, Rick Warren's church out in California. Walked in, we were in the parking lot. I'm dressed like this. Clearly didn't look like I was a member, right? And I'm with two other people, and this young 21, 22-year-old girl walks up and says, "Are you visiting?" I'm like, "How'd you tell?" And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Where's the entrance?" And she didn't say, "It's over there." She just smiled and said, "Come with me, I'll take you." And she walked us in. She didn't smother us.
Right.
She actually brought us to the door and said, "Here you are. Anything else I can do for you?" "No? Great. Thanks. Enjoy your time." That's who you want at the door,
Yeah.
right? You don't want somebody going, "Here's the bulletin," as they look away from you.
Oh, God.
And so making sure that we've got people's gifting lining up with the need we're trying to fill, paramount.
And this goes with the low standards, because it's like, oh, you volunteered to be a reader.
Yeah.
It's really hard to understand what you're saying. I guess we'll let you do that. Everybody's sitting there going, oh, I guess this is a mediocre parish because I can't even follow the person doing the reading. It doesn't matter to them. They'll let anybody do anything, or the person that's singing in the choir. Now, it's one of those things where people say, but if their heart's in it and they love Jesus, you should let them do it. But it's not a jobs program. It's about making the mass more beautiful, or helping people connect with the gospel. And saying to somebody, I don't think this is your gift, is not rejecting them. It's actually saying what we're doing is so important that we want to make sure that you're a good fit for that.
Yeah, so listen to this. This is a quote that I came across a set of years ago. Archbishop Vigneron, now retired from the Archdiocese.
Dear friend of mine.
You know very well. So in a letter that he wrote to the Archdiocese called Unleash the Gospel, which people can find, he says this. This is mind-boggling to me. The most basic task of a church leader is to discern the spiritual gifts of all those under his authority, and to encourage those gifts to be used to the full benefit of all.
Oh, wow.
And listen to this. Only a person who can discern the gifts of others and can humbly rejoice at the flourishing of those gifts is fit to lead the church.
Wow. Wow.
The most basic task, and only someone who's able to do that is fit to lead. Now, here's the challenge. Like the parish I was at, we had 12,000 people. I can't know the gifts of everybody.
No.
But I can know the gifts of my leadership team, and I can know the gifts of the key leaders of committees, and I can equip them and task them with, your job now is to go as a leader, find the gifting of those who are out there in the ministry that you're trying to do. And that's how it works, I think.
We want to be known and seen by Christ. And we want to be known and seen as the person he created us to be. And when he gives somebody a gift, and you can be the one to say, wow, you have a gift in that, I would like to help you use that to bring others to Jesus. That's the greatest honor you can ever have. And when somebody volunteers and people say, well, I don't know who you are or what you're good at, but this is what I need you to do right now. Oh, they don't feel seen. And so I love this story. I was at this big evangelical church, because over the years I've worked with a lot of different churches, and they had a guy come to them and say, I want to volunteer. And they said, what are you good at? And he goes, pretty much just one thing. I'm a mechanic. And they're like, you want to fix cars for poor people? They didn't have that ministry. And he goes, yeah, I would love to do that. So they started a ministry. You know why? Because they had somebody with that gift and that desire. Imagine if we thought of our parishes as like, okay, we have a plan and we have a charism, but we have people with gifts and we have a need in the community. Turning them loose to do that is amazing.
Totally. So it's pretty common as a pastor to have somebody come up, and it's often, not always, but it's often kind of a complaint. And it's, Father, we should have a whatever here. We should have a ministry for divorced here. We should have a ministry for people struggling with porn here. We should have, and the response to that is, unfortunately, we often say, well, we don't have one of those, but down the street, at Bob's church, they got one of those. And then people go there and they find community, and then they leave the church. what we need to do is just say, that's a great idea. You obviously have a passion for it. How about you lead it?
3 out of 5 times they're going to go, I could do that.
Exactly.
2 out of 5 times they're going to go, I'm not going to do that. And you're like, okay.
Then you obviously didn't care about it that much.
And it doesn't have to be that you have to have like a big formal effort around that. I mean, imagine you can stand up and say, hey, if anybody in the parish is interested in either helping people, the poor with their cars, or getting help for yourselves, Bob Johnson is going to be standing out in front because he's leading a new ministry that he'd like to do to help people with that effort. It doesn't have to happen on campus. It doesn't have to be organized in the church office. We tend to think it all has to be so formal.
Exactly.
Turn them loose to go out and be the church in the world. And
exactly.
Just the parish can be the platform for letting people know.
Yeah, and just let them know, like, I want to foster this. You look out at the congregation, everybody here has gifts, natural and supernatural. I don't know what they are, but I know the Lord's given them to you. And I know some of you have a passion to create something and to get it going. You have my permission. I just like to know about it.
And, we have a tool, and this is not a commercial because this is not the biggest podcast in the world, and we do lots of advertising, but called Working Genius. And it's a 12-minute test. And I think parishes should invite people to come to the parish and take the Working Genius thing, our assessment, the thing, so they can discover their gifts. Because what it does, it helps people discover their God-given talents in specific kinds of tasks. And just like Dave Ramsey had Financial Peace University, which drew people into churches to learn about how to manage their money, if you said to people in a parish, we want everyone to understand their God-given talents. Come here. We're going to give you this assessment. Then they're going to go, you helped me understand my gifts. I'd like to use them here.
And I'll just say as a priest and pastor, so there are so many great tools out there. I think the Working Genius is the easiest and the fastest one you can do to get the quickest turnaround.
Yep. And if you got a volunteer and they've said, okay, I'm going to volunteer, give this to them and go, oh, you shouldn't be working on that project. That would drive you crazy. You would love working on this project.
Yep.
Totally.
And in this capacity.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. So they're not generic. They're people with unique talents and gifts. The third one is something we mentioned earlier, and that is when we differentiate people that are volunteers from paid staff. The only difference is some of them need a job, some don't. And yet, we can really create silos and frustration among people. So I'm going to tell you, my wife, I was going to do it generically. My wife decided she wanted to do a Bible study for Catholic women. And then she met Lisa Brennickmeyer, who had already written one. So my wife started the first Walking with Purpose program west of the Mississippi. This was years ago. They were everywhere now. It's a women's Bible study. It's fantastic. She had 100 women coming every week to learn about Jesus. And God bless the people that worked in the parish. I think they were frustrated that she had been so successful and basically saw her as somebody that was using up classrooms. People did not come to her and say, how can we help you? They didn't come to her and say, hey, how are you doing this? Maybe you could help us figure out how to make ours better, because it was far more successful than the ones in the staff. And there was this resentment like, oh, this volunteer is threatening our status as paid staff. And it was so sad. And she ended up leaving after 10 years because there was just no interest taken there. And what they should have done is adopted her and said, hey, isn't it great that we don't have to pay you, but you can help us do better at the things we do? So having this demarcation between a volunteer and a paid staff member creates resentment and suspicion and hostility, and it's such a tragedy. How do you bridge that?
Well, I'll go back to the gifting question that you were talking about a minute ago. I think one of the ways that you do that, so when you recognize that's present in those people who are leading with me, what I can't do is I can't let it go. I need to address it. It might be an indicator that either the person might be in the wrong spot. If someone's on my team and they're helping me to lead and they're threatened by somebody else who's doing ministry for the work of God, that's a problem.
Yes.
So as a leader, I need to find a way to say, hey, help me understand this. Like, we're supposed to rejoice in seeing what's going on. Has something happened here in such a way that would inhibit you from rejoicing? Because this looks like a win for us. So just fostering a conversation there so we can, because either I want to help lead that person into deeper conversion and keep them, or I'm going to help them realize maybe I actually shouldn't be in the place where I am because I'm threatened by it and that's not good for me, let alone for the rest of the people I'm serving with. And so I'm going to help you find another place where you should be because it's not here. So I got great news for you. The Lord has other work for you. I just don't know where it is, but it's not here because you can't rejoice in what somebody else is doing for the glory of God. So I want to start with a good thing in the sense of maybe something happened I'm not aware of. Help me know what that might have been.
Yeah, and so often the priest has to enter the danger in that conversations, and it is uncomfortable. And so often what I find is that sin of omission, like, I'm just going to leave that alone. It'll work itself out. You know, though, Father, I would say this so many times. I talk to pastors over the years, and they say, we don't have a budget for staff. What they don't realize is sometimes that paid staff member is the one that's keeping the volunteers out. And I really do think almost every parish I've ever encountered has so many untapped people in the parish who are not looking for a job. What they're looking for is the ability to use their talent to help. And so often it's been going there and saying to somebody who works there, hey, I'd like to do this, and being met with suspicion and less than enthusiasm. I think that's a real problem.
Let's go back to Moses again. Not only is Moses told, it's not good, but then Moses, when he's, asking and the Spirit falls on the 70, then someone comes to Moses and says, hey, the Spirit fell on some other people here who weren't present. And Moses says, wait a minute, are you jealous for my sake? Because would that the Spirit would fall on everybody.
Wow.
So as a leader, right, I want everybody to be awakened to their gifting and then to flourish with it. And if we don't want that, well, then we shouldn't be doing what we're doing because there's no room here for jealousy. And so that's why it's so important, I think, for a leader to be making sure I'm pouring into the people that I'm serving with, and we're pouring into each other and not just pouring into the people that we're serving, so that we can get to know, we got to love each other. We got to walk with each other and help. I think the language we use is super important. Like we would say, I'll go strong on this just for a second. I think we have to be really careful that we don't corporatize the church.
Yeah.
The church is the body of Christ. It's not a corporation. We want to be run well. We want to do things well, but we're not a staff. We would argue St. Paul didn't have a staff. Jesus didn't have a staff. I don't think I'm supposed to have a staff. In other words, here's the key. If I model as a leader and I say about you, well, that's Pat, he's my administrator. What have I just said? I objectified you. Versus, that's my brother who's got the gifting of administration and he's doing it. And so if I'm modeling, I'm rejoicing in your gifts versus, no, you're actually, you're somehow my possession who's accomplishing something I want. If I'm modeling that, well, then the people who are serving with me, they're probably modeling it too. Versus, I'm rejoicing in your gifts. I want others to rejoice in your gifts too. We're just brothers. There's a hierarchy here to be sure, but we're brothers. We have one master. That's Jesus.
Another big problem is that when people don't see the people that volunteer as being in ministry. Like you could say like, oh, these are our people that are volunteering in ministry, and these are people doing other things. Every job in the church, every job is ministry. And you should never hire nor have a volunteer who doesn't want to be in ministry, because there's plenty of other organizations they can volunteer in, or for that matter, work in. And when you have an employee on your team that's like, I have a job at the church, it's like, no, actually, the most administrative or mundane thing is still evangelizing and discipling and being evangelized and discipled.
Yep.
So that whole idea of separating out any vocation in a church is a co-ministry with the pastor.
That's right.
Not threatening his authority, but like you just said, joining him in the ministry of the church.
We bring people here to our site for these week-long offsites. So we call them leadership immersives. So people come from Monday through Friday. We say to them either the first night or early the next morning, we hope that one of the things that happens this week is you lose your job.
Yeah, I love it.
Meaning, if you have a job right now, you'll leave here realizing, no, you've been set apart for mission to do the Lord's work. You don't have a job. You just happen to get paid for it. Maybe you don't.
Wow. So important. A parish is not a jobs program.
Yep.
A guy named John Ortberg, who was a evangelical pastor, once said, nobody should work in a church that needs the job. Now, that doesn't mean some people don't need to get paid. But when a person says, well, you can't let me go because I need this job, or when a priest says, well, she's not doing a good job, but what else? I'd rather you give her money to pay for her life as an act of charity than keep her in a role that's keeping others away.
Yeah, because it's bad for her and it's
Totally.
bad for everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to see you flourish, and you're not flourishing here, and you're not, again, to the Chrysostom quote, to encourage those gifts to be used to the full benefit of all. That's what a charism's for. It's not for my personal fulfillment. It's so that the body can actually benefit from it. Not so I can go, I feel really good about myself. You might feel really good about yourself, which is great. That'll be one of the ways it's a charism, is that like, this is really fulfilling and it's uplifting and I'm encouraged. But the bigger test is it's bearing fruit.
Yes. And somebody in my office here, when we were talking about this podcast, she said, one of the things I think you need to talk about is sometimes a pastor will ask somebody to volunteer to help them. And I get there's nuances to that, but it's like, no, it's to bear fruit out there. Yeah. Not to help just to help me. Now, there's some jobs a person can be an amazing assistant or help them in a mission. But sometimes a pastor, if they're like, hey, my volunteers are here to make my life better, like you said, it's to go out and to help others.
Quick word on that, because it's super helpful, I think. There are people who have what's called the charism of helps.
Yes.
I feel particularly drawn to serve. I want to work with Pat. I'll do whatever you want. What I'm drawn to is I love the ministry you're doing. I'm willing to serve you however you might need me. Here's my gifting. Could you use me? That's not like idol worship or, ooh, I want to be next to Pat. It's more like I'm attracted to what I see God do in you, and I want to come alongside you. How can you use me? And you can tell if you're anywhere astute, you can tell, do you just want to get close to me? Or do you actually have gifting and you're concerned about the mission?
Right.
So I got to be able to discern that, right? If I'm leading.
And that's where if the pastor has pure intentions, I want them to help me so that we can do more out there.
That's right.
And I think most pastors certainly have that attitude. So let's boil this down to a few solutions. Step one, the first thing you need to think about when you're rethinking your volunteers is get to know them and their gifts. Find out when somebody says, I want to volunteer, or even if they don't, say, I'd like to know, what are your gifts? Find out who has what talents in your parish and really understand how God made them uniquely. And as the Pope John Paul II said, unrepeatable. So focus on their gifts and they're not generic. Then give them a mission that challenges them and makes them feel like they're doing something important. I love what you said. Have them sign up for something that matters. People that are stretched want to volunteer. It's crazy in a parish. The people that do the most are the ones that want to do more.
Yeah, that's right.
Challenge them to do great things with high standards. Then make it indistinguishable. People that come into the parish should not even know who works there for money and who's a volunteer. You've been into parishes before. You're like, well, what's your job here? Well, I run this. And they're like, so are you on the staff? The answer is, yeah. That should have nothing to do with whether you're filing a whatever form for taxes or not.
Yep.
Some parishes have a big paid staff and no volunteers, and others have a small paid staff and a ton of volunteers. And all other things being equal, I would say the one with the more volunteers is usually the more vibrant one.
And I know a priest who's somehow been able to do it better than anybody I've ever encountered. Everywhere he goes, he has half the people who are full-time, get paid, and half the people who are full-time are volunteers. They just call themselves missionaries. They're all missionaries. Some of the missionaries get paid, and half the missionaries don't get paid, and he's just tapped into their gifting. It might be second half for their career. It might just be, hey, I just want to give back to the church, but they don't need the money. There's no tension between the two of them. They're all treated as we're all co-equal in the responsibilities that we have. Some of us just get a check from the place, but we're all working for God.
Who's that priest? Can you tell us his name?
Father Dave Sizemore, Columbus, Ohio.
I do know who he is. That's great.
It's extraordinary.
I know, isn't it? And literally, that is the difference maker. He knows how to tap into so many people. And so when you hear that, well, we have a rural parish, we don't have much of a budget. It's like, yeah. So maybe 80% of your parish can be volunteers.
Yeah. Moses didn't have a budget.
Right. That's right. Okay. The next one is make sure that when people say they're going to volunteer, say, so you have a heart for ministry then. And they might say, well, Father, I'm just an accountant. No. I want you to pour into the people you work with. I want you to, we're all going to pour into you. I want you to grow in your faith. You are here doing accounting because that's the gift God gave you, that you're good at tenacity and details and things like that. But we're doing it in the context of growing closer to Jesus. And if a person says, yeah, I'm not really that interested in that, then love them enough to help them find a job where that's not necessary.
That's right. There are no justs. We are the body of Christ. We're about the same mission, which is bringing people into the family of God.
And then you said something before we started. You talked about reminding people. Tell us about that.
Of the vision?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just so desperately urgent right now. Not desperate, urgent, that we hold in front of people over and over and over again the vision. I need to be reminded of the vision over and over. Without a vision, people perish. And I don't think if we were to always ask everybody, why does our parish exist, that we would have a ready answer to that. I mean, it's your first critical question, right? Why do we exist? And increasingly so, we have found super helpful. It's actually a collect for the church. It's in the missal. It's in the back of the missal, in the Roman missal. It's one of the masses for various occasions for the church, which articulates, like I've never seen anybody articulate the mission of the church, which is we actually pray, God, in the covenant of your Christ, instituted the church to be the means by which we would always go forward with the human family, renewing it in Christ and transforming it into the family of God.
Oof.
So the mission that we got to keep holding in front of everybody, we exist in this town to do what? To rescue, renew, and transform all the people in our community into the family of God, to bring them in here, mindful of the fact that life apart from God is a nightmare. And I don't care what anybody might say, all the data overwhelmingly proves that. It's God or it's nothing.
And we have to believe that and understand that and remind ourselves of that. I always say that I tell CEOs, you're actually the CRO, you're the chief reminding officer. And so often CEOs say, and I can just hear a pastor saying this, well, they already know this stuff. And it's like nobody ever left a company or a marriage or a parish because the pastor, the husband, the CEO, or the wife kept reminding them, I love you. This is why we're here. This is what matters. This is why this organization exists. In fact, people leave organizations because they're not reminded and they lose sight of that. But a pastor could do that, could walk around the office and repeat that 4 times a day. And people would be like, oh, yeah, I love that we never lose sight of why we're here.
And that's very different than a mission statement, which you see somewhere on a bulletin or in a plaque somewhere, but nobody knows what it is. And it doesn't motivate anybody. But the vision that drives us, that nobody's ever said, hey, it's too clear.
Right.
I get it. Too clear. Stop telling me.
Exactly.
They do say, stop talking, but they don't say it's too clear.
Yes. So what are they again? It's rescue,
renew, and transform the human family into the family of God.
Can you just imagine if you're like, hey, I want you to stop right now and ask yourself, how are you rescuing, renewing, and transforming people? And, what a great thing to be thinking about that. Okay, we're going to end right there and say this. Volunteers, it's almost crazy that we even use that word. They're not staff, they're not volunteers, they're part of the family. And let's get all the people in the family working together. Let's know who they are. Let's hold them to high standards. Let's make sure they know that they're in ministry and there is no other. They're part of the team. All right. This is great.
I love it.
Father John, thank you for joining me for this. I love it.
Great work. Keep it up, brother.
We'll talk to everybody next time on Upstream. God bless.